Hello again everybody, it's time for another 10 games to add to the Spectrum list from your comments. And this is a belting list actually, I've got to say, so hats off to you all. Obviously hats off to me too, because I chose the games from the comments, but hats off to you all for putting them in the comments in the first place. You'll see from some of the reviews here that we've got of these games, they're very highly regarded and they're all games that I think pretty much that I've played before too. So as usual, there'll probably be some missing that you're not too happy about, but obviously I can only pick 10 and I think I picked 10 really good ones here. So without further ado, here are your 10 more games to add from the comments. Okay, the first game we're going to talk about is Booty, released in 1984 by Firebird for the rather cheap price of £2.50. This was a game I played a lot of actually, and I did enjoy this. This was going to be on one of my lists eventually, but I figured a lot of you were clamoring for this in the comments, so it was about time we addressed that situation. As ever, you'll see a bit of gameplay and we'll read the scores that it got from Crash, and then I'll get to the review afterwards. I'll try and do it a bit briefer because we've got 10 games to get through here. I don't want to do like 5 minutes on each game because it's going to be a heck of a long video, but anyway, with that in mind, let's crack on. Use of computer 92%, graphics 90%, playability 94%, getting started 89%, addictive qualities 95%, value for money 99%. Wow, and overall 93%. And the general rating was the first budget game to get an unreserved appreciation from Crash reviewers, playable, addictive and excellent value for money. This is a confusing review I've got here from Crash. It's on 3 pages, which doesn't help me in a sense because it's very blurry, but also it's kind of higgledy-piggledy all over the place. You've kind of got Combat Lynx's review in there too, and a game called Jasper, and Booty's kind of spread all across the top, and then for some inexplicable reason on the last page it's smushed on the bottom. So bear with me while I read this because I've got to really negotiate through here. I'll read you a bit from the start of the review. We'll take a look at it now on the screen. It says, from its excellent animated title screen, you can see at once this is a salty sea dog of a game in which you play Jim, the cabin boy, on a hazardous quest to collect all the booty strewn around the decks of an old galleon. This is the first game from a very new company, but hardly an unknown one. Firebird is a trade name for British Telecom, Firebird being the evil alter ego of much loved feathered fellow Busby, if you remember Busby back in the day. There are 20 holds in the ship, or screens, with 8 rooms making up each hold. All the doors are numbered and require the appropriately numbered key to be collected before going through the door. These keys are dotted about in different rooms, so it requires some nifty thinking to work your way around. Okay, we're not going to read all of the game now like we did the last time, so we're going to get to a couple of the, well, I say criticisms, not a lot of criticism for this game. We'll read the second one here. It says, the first impression of Booty is its lovely title page. Second, a rather flat looking platform game, although the graphics are lively, animated and well designed. On beginning to play the game, this impression of okayness doesn't fade, as it's reasonable fun, just a matter of getting the right key to the right door and collecting the treasures. A few minutes later and this secondary impression is beginning to evaporate rapidly as the rich complexities of the game sink in. Not so simple after all then, not damn likely. All the screens are interlinked and you cannot really just clear one and move to another. Well, you can sometimes, but the ghosts often make this impossible. Some of the screens, which incorporate lifts, horizontal moving platforms, collapsing floors and lift stop floors which vanish after a second or two, start to give you the nightmare feeling that you may have been here before. Is this galleon the true inside of the yacht moored at the end of the Jet Set Willie mansion? I don't think so. The content of the game reveals itself coyly minute after minute with lively and ever-changing graphics. In fact, Booty is marvellous entertainment, at a challenging game and very addictive. It's also at a budget price, incredible value, get it. And that's all we're going to read off of these. We're not going to go too far into it. We'll read a little bit of the review and one criticism. Booty is a great game, and yeah, maybe an oversight not to put it on one of my lists earlier, but I knew you lovely people would take care of that for me. If you've never played it before, why have you never played it before? If you're into platform games, absolutely cannot go wrong with this one. Lots of fun and definitely an absolute no-brainer to add to the Spectrum. And the next game we have is Scuba Dive, which was released in 1983 for £5.50. This was one of those games, like I have mentioned previously, where I played a lot of this game, but not on the ZX Spectrum. I played this game on the Commodore 64, so this will be new to me on the Spectrum, but I do remember loving the game on the Commodore 64, so I trust that it will be a good game on the Spectrum, and obviously for what I played for the video it was fun. Let's have a look at Crash again. I think all these reviews might be Crash actually. We have our 7 marks which I'll go through while you watch the gameplay. Use of computer 89, graphics 98, wow, playability 90, getting started 89, addictive qualities 90, value for money 98, overall 92. So we'll read a little bit of the review here. It says, with their latest release, Durrell, who brought you Harrier Attack and our established game of the month in the last last issue, Jungle Trouble, claimed for it that it sets a new standard for animated graphics for the Spectrum computer. A rather high-handed claim, but one that seems amply justified by the scene of Scuba Dive. If you're one of those people who squirm with primordial horror at the sight of great white sharks, then stay well clear of this game. Yeah, I guess they're talking about people that probably saw Jaws a few years previous. I mean, hard to believe, isn't it, when this game was released? Yeah, Jaws was only about 6 years old at that point. No, 75 Jaws, wasn't it? Yeah, so it was about 8 years old at that point. It seems crazy now to think that, doesn't it? Considering, you know, Jaws feels like one of those like old time classics, you know. When this review was written, it wasn't very old at all. Anyway, back to the review. The state of animated graphics in this highly original game is every bit as good as anything you will see in the arcades, and the jaws agape sharks look pretty real. The basic object of Scuba Dive is to leap off your boat, dive down and collect pearls from oysters on the seabed. If you think it sounds easy, forget it. This is no game for beginners of the arcade art. For a start off, the sea is alive with fish of all shapes and sizes, from giant sharks and squids right down to tiny fish swimming in shoals. And if you've ever fallen for Jacques Cousteau's line that they are really very cuddly, you can forget that too. These guys are real killers. When you press the appropriate key, one of your free divers leaps out of the boat and then can be guided down to the rocky seabed. If he runs into it, he gets knocked out for a few seconds and killed if it happens immediately again. The pearls can be collected only from open oysters. To the right of the display area is a status section which records how much oxygen is used up. It's replenished by surfacing and finding the boat, which wanders off on its own. Only by touching the ladder at the rear of the boat are you safely aboard and ready to dive again. So that's all we're going to read from the review. The general rating on this one says highly recommended and excellent value for money. So as ever, we'll read a little bit from the criticism. It says this is an original game with excellent colour and graphics, although it's a shame about the almost non-existent sound. The fishy graphics are fantastic. One tends to get into trouble while admiring various forms of marine life. The game isn't very addictive, and I would have thought there could have been more to do, like harpooning sharks, but anyway, I liked it. I suppose back then maybe that was acceptable. If you wanted a game where you harpoon sharks now, people are going to get up in arms, aren't they, quite frankly. Back then I think everyone was still scared of Jaws, so they probably thought it was okay, but we've since learned, you know, sharks, they're not down there to cause us any harm unless we wander into their territory. So Jaws had a lot to answer for, didn't it, I suppose. I'm going to skip a little bit now. It says despite the simplicity of the controls, this is not an easy game to play, and on the higher skill levels it's downright maddening. This really shows what a bit of dedication can do in turning Spectrum graphics into something to be proud of. The game is also about as addictive as any around I've played recently. Anyway, that's Scuba Dive, another great recommendation. Like I said, played it a lot on the Commodore 64, haven't played it on the Spectrum, but looking at the pictures and playing a little bit of it, I can see I'm going to play a lot of this one. And I almost was tempted to say I'm going to deep dive into this one, but that would be too close to a pun, so I didn't say that one. But I'll definitely be adding this one to my Spectrum without a shadow of a doubt. The next game chosen from your comments is RType, released in 1988 for £9.99. So I have a confession to make. I have never played a version of RType, and I know that's a bit of a shock considering how popular this game is. Side-scrolling shooters, not really my thing. Not really. I mean, I played a few of them in my time. I played Falcon Patrol, if you ever remember that game. I played that on a Commodore 64. Obviously going way back to the arcades, I used to play Defender and stuff like that. But the more modern ones, I never really got much out of it, you know? I'm not a massive fan of like these sort of flying shooter games, really. I know it's bad, but then we like what we like, don't we? Do you know what I mean? So obviously my point being that, you know, I don't have a lot of experience outside of what I played for the video, but I'm always open to learn new experiences, and maybe, you know, I've matured enough now to enjoy a game like this, so maybe I'll give this a go. Let's read the scores from Crash while you're watching the gameplay as ever. It got 92% for presentation, 91% for graphics, only 60% for sound, so we'll have to read what that's all about. 94% for playability, 93% for addictive qualities, and overall 92%. The general rating, they said the frenzied action really sets Pulse's Racing a surprisingly good conversion of the classic coin-op. Okay, I'll read a little bit of the review. It says, according to Mediagenics lawyers, RType is a highly original arcade action shoot-em-up. Crash readers may have a different opinion of this IREM Corporation license, but as is so often the case, game format takes a backseat to actual playability. The scenario for all this is of the peaceful galaxy being invaded by hideous aliens variety. Okay, that's a hell of a start to a review, isn't it? Naturally, a lone spaceship will have a better chance against the aliens than the galaxy's massed fleets. And as for the pilot, well, thank you for volunteering. Very brave of you. The latest space fighter technology is represented by the awesome R9, a single-seat ship initially armed with just a standard R-type laser. While rather feeble in rapid fire mode, by holding down fire for a few seconds you can discharge a massive blue fireball which destroys virtually all in its path. Further weaponry can be added to your ship by collecting the glowing orbs deposited by the remains of a large number of blasted aliens. Add-on weapons include missiles, a more powerful laser, and a small remote craft which flings out at an amazing rate. These are lost when you die, so some pretty nifty flying is needed to get far into the 8 multi-loaded levels. So we'll duck over and see what Phil, whoever he is, has to say. He says, so it's arrived, the Spectrum conversion, one of the arcade's best looking coin ops. Well, it was bound to be a disappointment, wasn't it? But wait a minute, what's this? Colourful, well-drawn sprite in an absolute orgy of violent action. That's what. Okay, so there's quite a bit of colour clash and sometimes it's hard to see what's happening, but all the same, R-Type is amazingly playable and deviously addictive. Stunning range of weapons featured on the coin op is available here too, preserving the coin op's strategic aspects. After collecting a few extra weapons, your ship becomes an absolute fortress of weaponry with heat-seeking rockets, lasers and plasma bolts, and believe me, you'll need all the armaments you can get to combat the constant barrage of varied multicoloured enemies. As for the massive end of level monsters, all these features go to make R-Type truly excellent and challenging shoot 'em up. 93%. Like I've said, I've heard good things about the R-Type games. It's just like it's never been a game that I've ever played. Got no excuse apart from, like, you know, a lack of interest in sort of like those sort of shooters. I never liked the vertical or the horizontal shooters, really. Just not my thing. I played Gallagher and stuff like that back in the day, and like I said, Defender, but horizontal, vertical shooters just never really gripped me. So I'm kind of looking forward to diving into this for the first time, and it will be going on my Spectrum without a doubt to give it a try. All these games will be going on my Spectrum. It's whether I play them or not, because I've had them for years to play on emulators and never have. So, you know, it's a question of whether I play them or not, but I still think this is a good choice, and it's got great marks to back it up. So, and I know there's a lot of people out there, commenters are probably definitely looking forward to playing this one, and so I would assume that a whole bunch of you are going to be adding this one to your Spectrums. Time for the next game, and it is Fatworm Blows a Sparky, released in 1986 for £9.95. This game always cracked me up, not the gameplay as such, because it's another game that I didn't play when I was a kid, but I always remember reading the name and that used to make me laugh, and nothing's really changed, to be honest with you. It's a wacky name for sure. This has got really high scores from Crash, so I'll read you those right now. It says use of computer 96%, graphics 97%, playability 93%, getting started 82%, addictive qualities 94%, value for money 89%, overall 95%. Good overall score. The general rating, extremely silly and wonderful fun. This is a game I'm definitely looking forward to getting into on the Spectrum. Like I said, I haven't played it before, apart from the little bit for the video, but that never counts as far as I'm concerned. This Crash Reviews could be possibly the most colourful review I've ever seen, and consequently it's quite hard to read, so I've had to zoom right in on this one because obviously it's bright yellow. It's actually blinding, to be honest with you, this review. Let's read a little bit of it. It says, let's face it, just about the dumbest habitat for your average worm is inside of a Spectrum. But things being the way they are in computer games, that's exactly where this particular worm resides. Old Fatty, the world's most dense worm, has clearly hit upon the theory that this is the place where he's least likely to be hassled by blackbirds, robins and the like. Just as he is settling down to the easy life, he suddenly realises that things aren't so wonderful after all. Contrary to popular opinion, the inside of the average Spectrum is absolutely crawling with life. Creeper bugs buzz around in Sputniks, swooping low over the main PCB. The Sputniks, if not dealt with, instantly transform into crawlies, which try to attach themselves to Fatty. Just to add to the problems, termite-like crawlies sometimes erupt from the surface of the PCB and chase him around. Fatty's eventual aim in life is the very natural urge to pass on his genes to another generation. Considering the limited intelligence he has displayed up to date, this seems a thoroughly dubious goal. To reproduce, Fatty needs to collect 50 spindles lying around on the PCB. Then he's got to find the disk drive, get all his data copied, and clone himself. The microscopic world of Fatty is a world of bewildering height and depth. What might seem a sliver of silver conductor to you or me is an insurmountable obstacle to him. To get around, he has to be carefully steered up convenient ramps and slid along data buses suspended at dizzying heights above the PCB. All the various bits and bobs scattered around the place are given true perspective so that when they are the centre of the screen they appear flat. As Fatty moves and the object approaches the edge of the screen, the sides of the object come into centimetre view, giving an impression of height, not unlike flying over a Lilliputian version of New York. Very descriptive review, this one, isn't it? I'm going to look at some of the criticisms, otherwise we'll be here all day reading this review. It says, wow, this game has got graphics which look so amazing that I don't think I can comment on them fairly. The title is unusual if nothing else, but hardly prepares you for the stunning originality of the game. Playability and addictiveness are of the highest standard, but as for the graphics, well, what can I say? As far as animation and solid 3D goes, this is probably the best I've ever seen, though the colour arcade must still go to Light Force. Don't give a mark on these criticisms, but we'll also read the last one because it's fairly short. So the worm turns. Not only that, he writhes and wriggles. You just won't believe the sort of graphics in this game. The perspective and sense of height are so realistic I got vertigo. Not just content with awesome graphics, the gameplay is terrific. Trying to steer the worm around with the Sputniks buzzing overhead and all the time keeping in mind where you're going is some game. It's so good to see something this original. It's just like nothing else. This is going to set a new standard for solid 3D. And yes, this game does look epic. I am really looking forward to playing this one. I'm not quite sure why I never played this as a kid. I guess looking at it didn't look at the time like it was one that would really appeal to me. But, you know, like I've said, there's so many games available for the Spectrum that, you know, you really are never going to have played them all. Certainly as well, you know, we got to a point in our lives when we were getting new computers after new computers. Technology, we're in that stage where technology was moving forwards. And, you know, for me, in a very like modest family setup, you know, we couldn't keep hold of our old computers back then, and I'm pretty sure that's the same for a lot of you guys out there. So, you know, if we were updating from like say a Spectrum to a Commodore 64 or from a Spectrum to a Commodore Amiga, we would have to sell the Spectrum in order to fund that, you know. So I didn't have the Spectrum in my life for that many years that I could play every single game, you know. It's only like going back over emulation and stuff like that in more recent times that I've managed to start playing some of these older games. You don't know of the existence of all of these, and obviously I remember the title Fat Worm Blows a Sparky because it used to make me laugh when I was a kid, you know, because it would do a title like that, wouldn't it? But never actually played it. So I'm really looking forward to playing this, and I think this is a great choice. Plenty of you voted for this, so I'm pretty sure loads of you are definitely going to be adding this and playing this when the Spectrum comes out. So the next game from your comments is Dynamite Dan, released in 1985 and £6.95. So let me read you the scores this got in Crash again. Very good scores. 95% for use of computer, 96% for graphics, 96% playability, 94% getting started, 96% addictive qualities, 94% value for money, 94% overall. I'm going to read you the last little comments here. We got control keys definable, joystick any, keyboard play good, use of colour excellent, graphics first class, sound mega brill. There's a hell of a rating for you. Skill levels 1, lives 10, screens nearly 50, and the general rating is superb value for money game, and a game that I'm sure lots of people have got fond memories of. So let's have a look at the review. Designing elegant graphics so that loads of screens add up to some sort of building has been all the rage since Jet Set Willy, but this new Mirrorsoft platform game takes the idea about it as far as possible and features one of the most classically elegant buildings in any game. Dan's girlfriend appears to have been locked in a vast safe tucked in the depths of a massive pillared mansion inhabited by a variety of unpleasant denizens. Dan arrives on the roof, trendily in time for the new Bond movie, in an airship. I know what that's referring to. That's referring to View to a Kill, which came out in 85, and that's all about the villain in an airship, so I'm guessing that's what they're referring to there, and commences a mission of rescue. Should you enter the screen containing the safe, you'll see the girl pacing up and down in frustration and presumably in advanced state of asphyxiation. Yes, probably. The collectible objects in this game are sticks of dynamite, 8 needed to blow the safe, a weapon to defend yourself with against the rioting rotters, and food to keep up the energy level that distressed damsel rescuing demands. Food is a relatively simple find, being a wealthy house, but there's plenty lying around, but dynamite tends to hide in very inaccessible places. Worse still, it isn't in the same place each game. The house is divided up into 48 slightly overlapping screens, 6 high, 8 wide, but they wrap around horizontally, making the building effectively a cylinder. All along the bottom runs a river. This can be negotiated by waiting for a raft to float by, jumping down on it and keeping up with it by walking at its speed. Falling into the river is quite fatal, unless you have been lucky enough to discover an oxygen bottle somewhere. Above the river is a warren of foliage-lined caves and grottos, gradually mingling with the bowels of the house. Pump rooms, boiler rooms, electricity generator and storerooms. Above these are the commodious living apartments, with libraries, bathrooms, dining rooms, sitting rooms and the like. The building is topped off by the roof and its chimneys and classically domed towers. Let's have a look at some of the criticism. Mirrorsoft don't produce many arcade action games, but certainly the ones they do release are of pretty high standard. Dynamite Dan has to be one of the most tuneful games I've encountered, and it's not surprising to learn that its author is a musician in his day job. While platform jumping games are regarded as out of fashion in some circles, the overall combination of sound, graphics and effects in this game combine to make it extremely good value entertainment. There's life in the old genre yet. Yes, Dynamite Dan is a great game. It is one of those games I've played, thankfully, finally on this list. I was getting a bit embarrassed to say I haven't played this and I haven't played that. It's one I've played for sure. Platform games I love, but platform games still not amongst my favourite genre, but certainly a genre I play. I mean, we've talked about games that aren't within my sort of like genres that I played when I was a kid. Platform games I did, because I loved Manic Miner, I loved Jet Set Willy. I mean, who didn't, quite frankly? But yeah, games like that. I love Booty, which was at the beginning of this list. So yes, I do love a platform game, and Dynamite Dan is one of the good ones. Like I said, this would have been on a list eventually, but obviously I cannot put every game on. You know, I've only selected about 50, 60 games so far, so you think of a vast catalogue that's out there, there's going to be plenty that I miss. And like I've also said previously, I rely on your good tastes in the comments to mop up any that I may have overlooked. This is potentially one that did get overlooked by myself, but you guys have come to the rescue and definitely will be going on my Spectrum. Time for game number 6 on this list, Induro Racer, released by Activision in 1987 for £9.99. Like all the games selected from the comments to go on this list, it's got good marks in Crash, so we'll read the scores. 90% for presentation, 94 for graphics, 93 playability, 91 addictive qualities, 86 value for money, and overall 92%. Use of colour says generally monochromatic with background colour change for each course. Graphics large, beautifully drawn, fast with very smooth scrolling. Sound adequate. That's a good score there. I guess that'll do, won't it? You know. Skill levels 1 with increasing difficulty on subsequent courses. Screens 5 tracks, and the general rating is a risky Spectrum conversion that's paid off handsomely, providing all the thrills and spills of the original. This review's laid out slightly weirdly, so I've got to come backwards and forwards between the review and the criticism, but we'll have a little look through it now. It says race games never quite seem to lose their thrill, though many in the past have disappointed after raising expectations beyond programming skills. Now, after plenty of rather early magazine coverage, Activision's licensed version of Sega's successful coin-op Induro Racer is out for appraisal. The action involves a series of motorcycle races spread over 5 courses, each accompanied by its own background landscape. The objective is simple: outrace the other riders and successfully complete all the levels in the shortest possible time. That's pretty simple, isn't it? The biker is viewed from behind and slightly above in vanishing point perspective. He's generally centered in the screen, while the track scrolls sideways as necessary to suggest curves, and the distant landscape follows suit. The horizon also moves up and down, for Activision have incorporated the original's bumps and hills. First course is set in a tree-lined country road, introduces the player to some of the hazards that lie on other tracks. There's only a handful of competitors to contend with and few jumps or wheelies to be executed. Control is straightforward: steer left and right, accelerate, brake and wheelies, used to avoid losing speed on jumps. Start of every race, the timer is set to 60 seconds, the limit within which the course must be completed. The actual time taken to complete a course is displayed at the end of each circuit. Opponent racers pose a threat in as much as a collision with one flings your bike aside, losing you valuable time as you restart. We're not going to go over the rest of the tracks because it does talk about those, because that's just going to take too long to read all of those out. So we'll look at the first criticism. It says, well done Activision, at last someone's come up with a very realistic arcade conversion. You feel as though you're actually sat on a bike hurtling across a racetrack at over 100 miles an hour. The graphics are amazing. Hills, dips, jumps, trees, rocks and stones are all well designed and excellently animated. One little quirk though I wasn't happy with: the annoying tune which plays while you're racing. Gets in the way of the engine's revving sound. The price is a little high, but the realism makes this package worth the money. Have to agree with that comment. I'm not a massive fan of games that play music like over the background. Obviously, sometimes it's justified and sometimes it's fun, but I don't see why you have to have. I know it's based on an arcade game, so that's why you would have to have it, I guess, in something like this. But you know, if I'm racing a bike, for example, I don't really want music blasting out in the background while I'm doing it personally. But I get it. You know, if it's in the coin-op, it's going to be in the game, isn't it? So we can have certain sympathy there. But yes, Induro Racer, definitely one of the games I remember. I remember the way you get flung around on the bike as well. It's pretty cool when you're going over the jumps and stuff like that. Yeah, good racing game for sure, and another very good choice from the comments. So congratulations to all you guys. You are picking some good ones here, and yeah, definitely a game that's worthy of a place on the Spectrum without a doubt. And the next game is Spy Hunter, released in 1985 by US Gold for £7.95. This is another one of those games that falls into the category of I played this to death on the Commodore 64, not the Spectrum. I haven't actually played the Spectrum version before, but I absolutely loved it on the Commodore 64. See, the thing that happened for me was I got my Commodore 64 before I got a ZX Spectrum. I got one, basically my mum and dad were divorced. My dad bought us a Commodore 64, we kept it at his place, and then my mum bought us a ZX Spectrum, which we had like more access to in 1985. So that's the gist of the story. It's like I would get games often first on the Commodore 64 till I got my Spectrum, obviously, and then, you know, we didn't bother getting them on the Spectrum because there was other games, you know, and if you can only afford like 1 or 2 games and there's 10 games out and you've already got one of them on the Commodore 64, you're not going to rebuy it on the Spectrum, are you? Let's face it. So I've never actually played it on the Spectrum before, which is probably why I didn't add it myself, but I know how good Spy Hunter is because I've played it to death on the Commodore 64. So it doesn't surprise me that it's on here. Here are the marks as ever from Crash: 90% for use of computer, 82% for graphics, 89% for playability, 88% getting started, 80% addictive qualities, 81% value for money, overall 89%. We have use of color, very varied, bright and sharp, graphics attractive, good size, reasonably smooth vertical scrolling, sound, spot effects, average. Skill levels 2, novice and expert, lives 5, and it may not have massive lasting appeal, although it's a good high score game, and it certainly isn't a thinking game, but loads of fun to play. And I would agree with all of that. So we'll have a quick read of the beginning of the review. It says, this is US Gold's officially licensed Spectrum version of the American Bally Midway hit with you playing the Spy Hunter. Spy Hunter is a kind of road racer come river raider, an all action shoot 'em up of the old school. There are numerous sections to the game, but basically Spy Hunter takes 2 forms. It starts on a road as your weapons van pulls up at the side of the road to allow your spy car to roll down the ramp and onto the road. You're then on your own, guiding the car along tortuous roads, pursued by various enemies, each with their own characteristics. These can be destroyed by ramming them into the side of the road or shooting them. The second form occurs if you take the correct side road down to the boathouse. Driving into it automatically converts the spy car to an amphibious vehicle, and the chase continues on the water. While you're on the road, there's a chance to dock with the weapons van, whereupon the spy car's weapons are exchanged or added to. Weapons carried are displayed at the bottom of the playing area, and an element of strategy is involved, ensuring the right weapon is on the board for the particular task at hand. So we're going to have a look at some comments now. Not criticisms on this one, it says comments. An interesting point to all these US Gold releases of older American hits is that they seem single-handedly to be creating a rebirth of simpler arcade shoot-em-ups. Spy Hunter is definitely a very simple idea, but the speed, variety and ferocity of the action makes it huge fun to play. The large, well-designed graphics move very well, and I particularly like the way some of the nasty spin off the road. Spy Hunter combines all the elements of a good road racer game, although there's no 3D perspective, everything being seen from above, and a fast shoot 'em up. I think it's moderately addictive because the increasing difficulty is well built into the game and the screens are variable enough to add interest, but most of all, it's a good zapping game. Spy Hunter is a fairly good arcade to Spectrum conversion. The graphics are fairly good, though the sound is used poorly for such a great game. Of all the zap 'em up games I've ever played, Spy Hunter is a firm favourite amongst them. Playability is higher because there's such a lot going on all the time. I don't think that this game will keep anyone's interest for weeks and weeks because it's a fairly simple game to get into and to play. I particularly like the river scenes. They seem more varied than the ones on the Commodore 64. Well, there you go. That's going to be interesting for me to see that. So overall, I like Spy Hunter a lot on the Commodore 64. Playing it for the video, it was fun. It felt very similar to the game I played on the C64. So, you know, I think I'm definitely going to have a go at this on the Spectrum as well. And once again, it's another good game chosen by you guys. And like I said, I had no doubts about this one because I did like it very much on the Commodore 64. It's just obviously whether they've done a good job compared to that version, but the only way to know that for sure is to play it, and by all means so far the little bit I've played and looking at the review certainly seems like they've done a good job, and I'm looking forward to getting into this game a little bit more. And so on to game number 8, which is Glider Rider, released in 1986 for £8.95. This is a game I have played as well and very much enjoyed. 3D isometric looking game. One of the lower scoring ones that you've selected on the comments here, but still I like this game. I remember enjoying it when I played it at the time, and I enjoyed playing it for the video too. Let's have a look at the scores. Use of computer 86, graphics 90%, then it starts to go a bit downhill. Playability 79%, getting started 76, addictive quality 77, value for money 79, overall 80%. So still good score, just not as good as some of the other ones. And just reading a couple of the little comments, it says sound poor on the 48K, but superb tunes and effects on the 128K. Skill levels 1, screens 100, that's a lot of screens. General rating, a bit of a letdown for faithful 48Kers players, but still a well above average and original game, which is kind of what we said, wasn't it? It didn't get the best scores, but 8 out of 10 still a good score overall. And we'll have a read of the review now. Joining the silent but deadly squadron is not a good idea if you're looking for a quiet life. Any dirty jobs going and you get it. This one looks particularly nasty. A bunch of arms dealers called the Abraxas Corporation with few scruples and no questions asked, John, are causing a bit of a problem. So the World Council, in its infinite wisdom, has decided that the Abraxas Corporation has got to go. And the lads at the good old SBD Squadron are the ones to do it. I mean, boys, we'd do it ourselves, but what with the island being made of plastic and therefore invisible to radar, we thought we'd give you the honour. When our brave chaps get to the island, they discover that some joker from the armory section has been taking a little practical mickey. Instead of a rather fast jet and a couple of nice thermonuclear jobs, you've ended up with a convertible hand glider and a handful of grenades. Terrific. Fortunately, Abraxas has designed its plastic island with lots of nice hills scattered all over it, so the technique is to zip around the island with the hand glider, cunningly disguised as a motorbike, then shoot down a handy hill and launch it into the air by quickly reversing the direction of movement. The object of the mission is to bomb everything in sight on the island. Unfortunately, things can only be bombed from the air, and as soon as you take to the ether, the local laser opens up, thus draining energy. Our hero starts his quest with 100 energy points. At 0, he's a goner, and he can become shark food if any careless flying is done over the sea. The trick is to headbutt a radio mast. This makes the local laser base go a bit loco, then take to the skies quickly before the laser gets itself sorted out and bomb the reactor, which tends to be very close to the laser base. There are 10 of these reactors scattered around the island, all of which have to be taken care of in half an hour, otherwise the rescue sub takes off, leaving our hero stranded. Stockpiles of grenades have been left lying around the place, which he can help himself whenever he likes. So let's read a couple of the little criticisms here. Good news first, Glider Rider's nicely drawn graphics and a great tune if you own a 128. After that, I'm afraid it's a bit of a disappointment. Once the technique of hitting the nearby radio mast, finding a convenient slope and taking off is mastered, the game is rather dull. Whether you can actually take off when you try seems entirely random. It's a nice idea, a lot of trouble has gone into the graphics and the animation of the characters is good, but I just can't rate it that highly because it's practically unplayable. Wow, this person does not like it. Okay, let's see if we can find one that's a little bit more positive. I'm not overly impressed with this offer from Quicksilver since it isn't half as playable as it could have been. Because the playing area is nice, large and easy to get lost in, and the blurb on the inlay sets the scene very well on your first go, it's very easy to get right into the spirit of the game. The graphics are very good, the playing area is excellently drawn and so is your character. There's very little flicker and next to no colour clash as well. Unfortunately, sound on a 48K machine is limited to the odd spot effect. It's brilliant on the 128K version. On the whole, I found it very hard to get anywhere in Glider Rider and I suspect it will need a lot more practice to complete it than I have time for. Okay, right, fair enough then. I think that's where we have an advantage on the Spectrum because we'll have the rewinds, we'll also have, if you're, one of those people that wants to use them, I know some people are dead against that, but you'll have that facility available. You'll also be able to save often, so you will be able to come back to this game, fairly frequently if you want to get further into it. So I think we'll have a bit of an advantage. I think that's where it's going to come into its own. I've just noticed the bottom of the review, they give a separate score. I didn't even see that because I had to zoom in so much. It says, since the differences between the 48K and 128K are rather obvious in Glider Rider, we thought we'd indicate the ratings separately. So the ones I read were for the 48K version. Okay, that's interesting. The additional sound has most effect on ratings like playability and addictivity. Here's one critical comment for the 128K version. What can I do except go rave, rave, rave over the indescribably superb music in this game? There is just no competition for this in the oral stakes as far as any Spectrum games go. Okay, well that's glowing praise indeed. Mikey, Ping Pong, Nighttime and all their tunes are put to shame by the stunning soundtrack and FX of Glider Rider. This one gets use of computer 96, graphics 90, playability 89, getting started got the same mark as 79, addictive qualities 90, value for money 85 and overall 92, which is a big jump from 80% on the 48. So definitely that's the advice there. Get the 128K version. I remember playing this game and enjoying it. You guys seem to enjoy it in the comments too, so don't believe all the negativity on this one. Add it to your Spectrum. Game number 9 is Outrun by US Gold, released in 1987 for the price of £8.99 or £12.99 on disc. So you won't be surprised to learn this is a game that I didn't play on the Spectrum. I played it on another computer, but this time not the Commodore 64. I mostly played this game on Commodore Amiga, but I don't think any of the home computer versions received rave reviews. I could be wrong on that one. I actually quite enjoyed playing it on the Amiga, but there we go. This is going to be the lowest scoring game on this video. Again, it's not terrible scores, so it's not not like it's slated, but it's just not going to get the best scores. So we'll read the marks from Crash as ever. Presentation 77, graphics 71, playability 75, addictive qualities 75, overall 72%. And in the comments said, graphics, the individual vehicles are accurately drawn, but jerky animation detracts from the realism. Sound, superb 128K rendition of the arcade tunes, the 48K lacks such enhancements. Options, 3 levels of difficulty, and the general rating, views would split between the best you could have expected and a poor translation of a great arcade game. So there you go, they weren't buzzing about this one. I could probably read all of this because it's quite a short review. Sega's best-selling arcade racing game has just been converted to the Spectrum by US Gold, which claims it sold over 200,000 copies in its first 2 weeks, breaking all records and setting it to beat Gauntlet on total sales. The objective in Outrun is to race a Ferrari Testarossa to one of 8 locations within the time limit. The screen shows a 3D view of the track from above and behind the player's Testarossa. The car has 2 gears and an accelerator which come into effect as soon as the lights go green. Digital speedometer and rev counter inform the player of the car's current performance as it negotiates, dips, curves and dodges other traffic. Should the car run into the back of another vehicle, it loses speed, but driving into a large roadside feature throws the car off track and leaves the driver and his girlfriend sitting in a dazed stupor until their vehicle is placed back on the road. The action is played against a constant decreasing time limit. Failure to reach the next checkpoint within the time limit ends the game. When a checkpoint is reached, one of 2 routes is chosen and the next part of the course loaded from tape, and extra time is added to the total so the player can progress. When the 5th course is completed, the game ends. And we've got the views here. BIM, I don't know who BIM is. This must have one of the worst multi-loads in history. As soon as the checkpoint is reached, the action instantly freezes and the next track loads, and as soon as it's in, the action starts without warning. This wouldn't be too bad if you had only spent a couple of seconds waiting, but sometimes the wait goes on for ages and it's easy for your attention to wander, the action to restart and the car to crash. Gameplay is very slow and the graphics and sound are generally disappointing. Outrun isn't a great conversion, 63%. The very contrasting views here. So we've got this one says 63%, we've got this one here says, why are US Gold doing this to me? First California Games turns out to be a massive disappointment, and then Outrun, a classic arcade machine, turns out to be another disappointment. Fair enough, the 128K version has an excellent tune which doesn't appear to slow the game down, but I ask myself, is it possible to slow it down further than it already is? The traffic on the road is jerky and badly animated, and the road itself isn't exactly the paragon of smoothness. US Gold have made the best job they could, but it just isn't enough. Outrun is a full price, full scale letdown, 59%. So you're thinking 63 and 59%, they hate this game. Why did it score 72%? Well, I think Nick's thrown off the curve slightly because he says, at last Outrun has arrived on the Spectrum, but all those of you that are expecting this to be just like the arcade version, better leave the room right now because you are going to be so disappointed. The graphics are as well drawn as possible on the Spectrum and the sound on the 128K is absolutely fantastic. The only thing that lets the game down is the lack of colour, which is usual for this type of race game. On the 48K you also have to load each track separately, which is might frustrating, but the problem is resolved on the 128 because once you've loaded the track it stays in the memory. Outrun is an essential purchase for all you budding arcade gamesters. Miss it and you'll regret it for the rest of your life. 93%. So there you go. We've gone 59, 63, 93%. So there you go. Make of that what you will. I know you guys wanted this game on here because quite a few of you have said Outrun in the comments. I like playing Outrun. I bought it for my Switch, so you know it proves I do like the game. Didn't just play it on the old machines when it came out on the Sega Ages stuff on the Switch. I bought it and I've played it a few times on there too. I do like Outrun as a game. I don't have any experience with the ZX Spectrum version beyond this video, so I will maybe play through it a few times and then give a more accurate review on the channel further down the line. But for now I'm happy to add this as part of the comments collection because who doesn't like a game of Outrun? I'm hoping that it's not gonna, I mean we can play the 128K version, can't we? So we don't have to deal with the disappointments of the 48K version. So hopefully that will make up for the disappointments they had with that version, and you be the judge of whether it's worthy of a place on your Spectrum. For me it's going on mine and I'll give it a whirl and we'll see how we get on with it. And finally we have Lunar Jetman, released in 1983 for £5.50. So let's look at the marks that Crash gave this. 90% for use of computer, 99% for graphics, wow. 95 playability, 90% getting started, 95% for addictive qualities, 100% for value for money, that's amazing, and 95% overall. So great scores there. In the comments we've got keyboard positions, very well laid out, practice makes imperfect, but it's the only way. Joystick options, Kempston, AGF Protect. Keyboard play excellent and highly responsive, use of colour excellent, graphics excellent, sound excellent, skill levels no choice, but difficulty increases with each screen. We don't know how many of them there are yet. Lives 5 and games 1 or 2 player. Okay, so we'll take a look at what they say in the review. There can't have been a Spectrum owning games player who hasn't wondered what the Wizards at Ultimate could do if they moved up to 48k. Well, now we know. Amazing. In a neat touch, it is we, the games players, who are blamed for the predicament our hero finds himself in. It seems none of us was quite good enough at assembling his rocket in Jetpack, and now its various stages are disintegrating in warp space. Luckily, he manages to crash land on a strange planet where he is stranded with his hyperglide moon rover and a bunch of most ferocious aliens yet. Briefly, Jetman is discovered standing outside his vehicle not far from a rounded object which resembles a bomb. It has a B inscribed on it, so it must be a bomb. You have to discover for yourself since no one tells you anything in this game. Instantly, aliens move in, 3D green boards swirling end over end, bouncing red balls and others in later screens. If an alien hits him on the ground, he creates a small crater. If he's in the air, they bowl him into a spin dive and he makes another crater on the surface. These craters are important because the moon glider can't pass them. If you can get him into the vehicle, then he's safe from the aliens, and pressing the thrust direction keys will cause the vehicle to roll along until it meets a crater crevice. Fortunately, the moon glider is fitted with short bridging units. You have to get Jetman out of the vehicle, pick them up and deposit them in the crater without making a fresh one. Finding out how to get bridge units is a trial and error situation, and if you don't already know how, you'll just have to find out. There are enemy bases some distance from the moon glider. An indicator at the top of the screen points their direction. These can be bombed by carrying the bomb and dropping it onto that base. The problem is that the base is too far to carry it in the air, because Jetman only has a severely limited fuel supply and drops faster if he's carrying something. So he has to drop it on the bonnet of the vehicle and get in and drive, get out, make bridges, get in and drive until reaching the base, get out, pick up the bomb, drop it, and all without getting killed off. It doesn't sound too complicated, does it? I think we only get one criticism section here, so I might have to read all of this. Well, what can you say? Marvellous seems inadequate. The graphics are richly coloured, highly detailed, very similar to Jetpack, but just many, many more of them. The alien base is a solid, real and complicated building with whirling radar towers and missile launchers. If you take too long, a warning flashes up that a missile is about to be launched. If you discovered the function of the iron-shaped object lying about on the ground, then you can use it to shoot down the missile. But I found flying about and hitting it with the laser was much more effective. Graphics are brilliant, every bit as good as a powerful arcade machine, and the amount of things you can do with Jetman and the hyperglide will keep you going for hours. This is the most maddening and excitingly frustrating game Ultimate have come up with. So there you go, that's definitely endorsement from Crash Magazine, and this is, yeah, one of the games on the list that I've played a lot of, one of the games I do like. Not quite sure why it hasn't made a list yet, to be honest, but as always, we're mopping up the games we missed earlier on these lists, and yeah, definitely worthy of a place on it. I'm pretty sure most of you are going to be adding this to your Spectrum, because I think probably most of the Ultimate Play the Game games are going to go on everybody's Spectrums, I'm pretty sure, because they are just so good. And yeah, this is probably my favourite game on this list, to be honest, and if you've never played it before, what are you waiting for? Okay, so there we have it. There are another 10 games from the comments to add to the Spectrum. In order, they are Booty, Scuba Dive, RType, Fatworm Blows a Sparky, Dynamite Dan, Induro Racer, Spy Hunter, Glider Rider, Outrun and Lunar Jetman. And I think you'll agree, a very good selection. Probably rated the worst game on that list was Outrun, and that's probably the game I got the most memories of ever playing. Although to be fair, it's another game that, like I said when I was talking about it, it's a game I played more on the Commodore Amiga rather than the Spectrum. So I think for me that makes it addable in the sense that I'm going to give it a go on the Spectrum probably for the first time, you know. Obviously I played it for the video, as I always have to, but I always feel like when I play the games for the video, unless I really get invested in it and do play it for like an hour or something, I'm only really playing a little bit, so I would like to dig into that one a little bit more. Spy Hunter also, as mentioned previously, I played a lot on the Commodore 64, never played on here. Same with Scuba Dive as well. So there's a few games out there that I've got to experience a little bit more on the Spectrum, and I'm looking forward to it, but definitely some classics in here. So thank you so much for all your comments, and without those comments obviously I wouldn't have this video and I wouldn't have the previous one as well. So thank you for putting your suggestions in the comments, and also keep them coming. Although I don't know when I'm going to do another 10. I've got one more planned for October, and then I've got my thing for November. I can't believe actually that Retro Games Limited have already stolen my idea. Obviously they haven't, because I didn't know what it was, but you know what I'm saying. Technically speaking, they're already doing what I've got planned for November. I might as well reveal that now, actually, to be honest. I'm going to sort of concentrate on the games that are included with the Spectrum. We're going to highlight one per day. I'm going to try and get 22 videos up in November. I mean, if I manage it, it'll be a miracle. If not, I'll have to knock a couple off and we'll see, because obviously I can't promise that I can make 22-day consecutive videos simply because of the way my health is lately, but hopefully I'll be able to. That's the plan anyway. I just kind of thought it would be a nice way to do a countdown. I'm picking 22 randomly out of the 48. I've tried to pick the ones I know better. Obviously I'm not going to pick ones I've never played before, and we'll just have a little bit more look at them in depth, because we've spoken about games we want to add, but we haven't really spoken much about the included games. So I thought that might be a nice way to count down to the 22nd of November. Anyway, thanks very much for watching, everybody. Please like the video if you would. That would be great. It really helps the channel, and I'll speak to you soon. Take care. Bye for now.